Hey everyone, happy Friday. We made it. And a great way to end the week is a discussion with Leonard Lee. Really one of my favorite connections on social media, who's been helping companies realize value through innovation and thought leadership as a management consultant and industry analyst for how many decades, Leonard? Are you at this now?
He's going on. Well, I think I'm in my third.
Okay, well, that doesn't make us feel too old, but really delight to have you here.
Oh, it makes me feel
We
old.
Yes, that's going around these days. But rather than have me introduce you, introduce yourself for the audience and your work at NextCurve.
Yeah, sure. So, hey, first off, Evan, thanks for having me on. This is a long time coming. I think we've mutually been following each other for quite some time in the metaverse, and and so yeah, I've been in this whole consulting industry analyst or industry research game for almost 30 years, and I have a long history in management consulting, working with some of the leading, technology and strategy firms, as well as a stint at Gartner as a managing partner, working with some of their big tech and media and telco clients who end up being, quite tough to work with.
Yeah.
They end up having like the biggest questions, and they're pioneers, right? They're really pushing the edge of all this digital stuff that we talk about almost every single day, or at least that's our bubble that we live in, right? And so what I've been doing with NextCurve is taking more of a multi-domain approach to research, and I found that was really necessary in addressing some of the big questions and the frontier topics and priorities that my clients have. And so that's why I started NextCurve. And for the last 5 years, that's essentially what I've been doing, is working with some big brands out there in the tech universe on some of these top of mind priorities, as well as frontier topics. And so it's been great. And, one of the things I really love is just being able to leverage my 30 years of experience, or going on 30 years of experience, in doing some really fun stuff and some amazing projects that never really imagined that I'd be doing, Evan, quite frankly. And so in that way, it's quite a blessing. And now I'm here with you on your show, and that's the
Yeah, absolutely. And we're all media companies now, so we all have a show. So
Yeah.
thanks for joining. Tell me, I've been at this for 30 years as well. I did a little stint as in a management consulting company called Arthur D. Little back in the day. How has that game changed over the decades of consulting with business leaders, management consulting? What's different from when you started, out of curiosity?
Geez, I mean, I think the simple answer to that question is technology, right? I mean, it really has been the thing that has become a priority in terms of how we talk about strategy, how we talk about the future of business, how we talk about future of work, supply chain, you name it. And what I mean by technology, I want to be a little bit careful here, because I think technology is a highly overloaded term. Probably what is a better term is the old school term that we used to use, which is information systems. Because, quite frankly, a lot of enterprises, a lot of us don't use technology per se. Okay. And the reason why I say that is I just want to pay tribute to all of the folks who got their PhDs and MSs in engineering that are truly, some of them, especially in the research realm, are truly working on technologies. What we usually deal with are applications, whether it's a smartphone, it's packaged software from SAP, what have you. A lot of these companies that we call tech companies are not really tech companies. You know what I'm saying? They're software companies, software engineering companies, right? They take someone else's software, computer science inventions and then they apply it, right? But all these the technologies and their applications have become so fundamental to business, to economy, to our lives. I think that's really what's changed. And the old school paper pushing kind of consulting that we used to do. I mean, back when I started, I would, they just introduced laptops, right? Before then, we had to actually write stuff in spreadsheets, and I don't mean Excel. And so, all that has changed. And so instead of just looking at numbers, we're looking at something so much more than that. And I think the consulting industry has been kind of in the leading edge of that because, think about it. Even when I started in consulting, and the reason why I got into the technology side of things is because I saw, hey, this IT stuff, this IS stuff is really transforming the way that we can not only operate our businesses, but imagine where our businesses can go. So,
yeah, it's a great insight. And you've dealt with many influential business leaders going back, I think, to PwC and then Gartner, and of course, as an independent and team builder. I'm curious, what are some of the common traits or characteristics that you've observed in those clients and those individuals that contribute to their success? In some cases, with entrepreneurs, it's success after success after success. What's the common characteristic that flows through them, you think?
Well, I mean, I would say that if you really look at the backstory of a lot of the behind a lot of the headlines, there's a lot of drama that happens, right? But if we're to talk about the character of leadership and how that fosters, let's call it successful outcomes, and maybe in a serial fashion, I think it really boils down to, and this sounds so simplistic, but truly a focus on the customer. And I don't mean necessarily, knowing the customer from the perspective of what they express and say in surveys. It's like knowing the customer, having a relationship with the customer, having a personal, quite honestly, not a digital or augmented relationship, or sort of this call it digital relationship, real relationships, and understanding of the markets that they're in. And I think that there's this organic feel, and it comes out in the conversations that you have with people, right? It goes beyond, oh, hey, we saw this particular survey and it says XYZ. These folks have a sixth sense of where the market's going, what the need is, and being able to tune into it. And that being said, it's really hard. Not everyone does it very well, and not everyone is serially successful. And so it's one of the challenges that I think, especially when you look at the velocity of business these days, that a lot of business leaders have trouble with. And I think it gets exacerbated by these these rolling hype cycles.
We're caught in one. We're going to dissect that as well. It wouldn't be a podcast tech show if we didn't talk about AI. But before we go to the obvious topics, I am kind of interested in that. You had a really good quote about a ferocious appetite for change being the key to survival in today's digital world, and that really caught my attention. Most people not avoid change. I mean, organizations, we all have big organizations that are resistant to change. So what's your thought here about it leading into it? I mean, that's a tough proposition.
Yeah, it is a tough one, right? And it's one that enterprises and organizations have grappled with forever. And it's not that introducing agile processes and practices really change things, right? It ends up becoming sort of, the thing that really needs to happen is a change in the DNA of the organization. And it goes beyond, I mean, everyone loves to say, yeah, the culture. It's so much more complex than that. I think it really is a holistic thing that has to happen. And one of the reasons why it's so difficult and why we keep seeing all these papers that, from a lot of the strategy firms saying the same stuff over and over again, just recast it with maybe a new, a new techno theme, right? It is because these changes that these companies need to be able to go through in order to respond to a very fluid business environment are very difficult to do. It just is not that easy. And having leadership that's able to orchestrate all the aspects that need to be conditioned into the organization, into the people, and the governance structure is super hard. And none of this stuff is easy. And I think one of the challenges organizations have is that the discourse around, adaptable organizations and agility and all these themes that we talk about all the time in terms of what a digital organization should be are fairly fragmented and disconnected. So I think there's a great opportunity for thought leadership to bring a lot of that stuff together. And, Evan, maybe you're like one of the guys that can help make that happen, because you talk to a lot of people. So,
I'm just a geek at heart. So, I don't know about the thought leadership side. But the other thing, I speaking of thought leadership, you talk about being comfortable with being uncomfortable, which is such a great quote. I mean, just for video, for example, I always hated live video, live streaming pre-pandemic. I thought it was something for your 16, 17-year-olds. But here we are on live video. How do you advise, clients to get uncomfortable? Because, in corporate, we're told to be safe and with our jobs, with our careers, and a lot of that does not involve discomfort. It involves doing things you're good at.
Absolutely. I think a lot of it has to do with helping people become aware of the actual environment, right? And so one of the things I don't do is you won't ever see me do is really pump the hype cycle. There's always a ground truth that I think organizations need to tune into, and it's usually a much more uncomfortable frame of thought and perspective than what you might be led to believe, and tuning folks into those ground truths and what they need to do, and helping them understand this stuff is not easy. Okay, here are the things you actually have to do to get the value you think you can get out of this technology or these applications and stuff like that. Helping them understand that is kind of it's a way of easing people into sort of uncomfortable, right? Because right now we have a problem of being overly elated about things because speaking of AI and metaverse and all these things, I mean, think about how everyone is like, oh, hey, wow, this is going to change, this is going to be transformative, blah blah blah, and then next thing you know, it's like metaverse is like dead. Not quite
on hold, yes, but
maybe on hold or whatever. But the thing is, constructive perspectives, I think, tend to be a little bit more sobering than aspirational and fantasy driven ones, right? And so bringing people back into the reality and helping them feel where the ground is part of just settling people into what are becoming uncomfortable situations. Change is uncomfortable, period, for most people, he said. So
great point. Of the emerging technology landscape that's out there, what do you cover and what are you most excited about? What are you passionate about
Yeah,
That's super interesting. May or may not have been in the headlines like
yeah,
ChatGPT and OpenAI, but yeah.
sure. I mean, I cover a lot of different stuff. Again, going back to what I mentioned earlier about the purpose and the why of Next Curve, solving some or addressing some of the biggest problems of the biggest players in the technology industry, quote unquote, requires a broad brush of perspective and research. Okay, is just firmly what I've realized through my tenure at all these companies prior and the work that I do now. But the areas that really interest me are kind of, I don't know, I guess they're semi maverick topics. One is definitely technologies and architectures around privacy and privacy first. This concept, I've been like tooting that horn for at least 4 years now, and I'm really glad to see that there are some solutions and technologies evolving in a way that enable applications that can be built that are more mindful of our privacy and our personal data, right, while also providing consented revenue opportunities for businesses out there. The other one that I think is exciting but needs a revival is 5G. I know that it's gotten beat up a hell of a lot in the last 2 years, about a year and a half, I would say. But there's a lot of potential in that standard, and the technologies that continue to advance and evolve underneath it are actually very powerful, and most people don't know about them. 5G. They think of it as a technology. It's not really a technology. It's a standard, right? It's a set of goals. Then there's all the underlying technologies. So going back to what I was saying before, I'm really cautious. I'm a little bit cautious about how I use the term technology. But that's another. And then I think an emerging thing that's going to happen. I've posted about this quite a bit is responsible AI. So let's forget about generative AI and ethical AI, which is what we want. Like ethical is what we impose on the AI application itself. We want it to be ethical as an entity. Responsible is what people do with these technologies and these applications, and being responsible about what you put out there into the public, right? So.
Totally. So you're just on the heels of MWC.
Yeah.
A private 5G was a big topic, one that I'm pretty deeply involved with. Any other trends or opportunities that you took back from Barcelona that you might want to share? Any insights from the big show that's kind of back now, right after
that was great.
COVID?
Yeah, I mean, it was like 88,000, right? I think that was what John Hoffman told me, and I don't know. I thought it was exciting. I mean, what did you think?
Yeah, no, I think the vertical applications, the industry specific applications. I do a lot in healthcare.
Yeah,
and hospitals need a huge refresh in their networking and their backbone, and there's just tons of opportunity there with private 5G. So I was reasonably optimistic. I mean, you must do a ton of events. How do you decide where to go, what to do? Is it really client driven, or do you just get on a plane every week and travel around the world? What's your strategy there?
My strategy is it's all the first priority is having fun.
Okay, well that's a nice rational approach.
Yeah. And then number two, it just needs to support my research agenda, and a lot of that is oftentimes driven in terms of priorities based on the kind of project work that I'm doing or what my clients' priorities are. That's basically it. But I try to limit my travel. I mean, everyone thinks that, I'm going out there and trying to be like the Anthony Bourdain of tech. And,
That's a
like,
good one.
no, not really. I kind
Uh,
of you'll see me with this background quite a bit.
yeah, and there's so much you can do like this that's virtual now. It's
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah,
What's your take on the analyst space? I mean, from Gartner, your Gartner days to being an independent, as it were. Um, are we all becoming, as analysts, kind of just marketeers now, or is there a role for, pure play thought based analysis? Because there are these tensions between being commercial and being seen and writing and being visible and
yeah,
quote unquote marketing versus just delivering the work. Is
yeah.
that a tension that you see out there in the analyst community now? And yeah,
Well,
just to
yeah.
say something about Gartner too. We'll rile them up a bit maybe from your Gartner
Well,
days. If
well, you know what? The big guys have their game. Okay, like the Gartners and the IDCs of the world, right? For the independents, the smaller ones, we have our own purpose, right? And obviously, from from a business model perspective, it tends to be a little bit. We deal with different types of economics, right? And one of the wonderful things about social media and just sort of this quote unquote creator economy and is that now analysts and pretty much anyone can put thoughts out there, thought leadership, or they can do marketing. There are all these different avenues for monetizing what it is that you provide in terms of value. I think some folks they take more of a, let's say, a journalistic approach. Others might do something that's a little bit more on the thought leadership and consulting, side of things. So, if you look at like a Deloitte or a Accenture, go to their site and they have the thought leadership section. Well, you're kind of like that, except maybe independent in terms of thought and perspective as a analyst or a consultant. So, the thing is that I think that the landscape is changing. Obviously, there's now new avenues, and for the analyst industry. And independence, just new ways of going to market and serving clients, right?
Yeah, no, I love it, and I still haven't figured out how to describe myself and what I do. One day, I think maybe I'll figure that out. So you mentioned Accenture a moment ago. Just out of coincidence, they just announced a big layoff, or big in terms of people, small, I guess, in terms
Yeah.
of percentage. So when it comes to our industry, the tech industry, are you, cautiously optimistic or, pessimistic about the next, year in tech? What do you say?
I think you know what I think there is definitely going to be a little pain going forward, a rationalization of not only expectations and markets and organizations, industry. It's just part of the cycle, right? I mean, take the semiconductor industry for example. And we were like people saying, "Oh, you know what? Because everything's becoming digital, the semiconductor industry is going to be skyrocketing forever." And it's like, no, you know what? This is a highly cyclical and dynamic industry that goes through big peaks and really, dramatic troughs. And you just can't lose sight of it. And those are the kind of things where you have to realize that, when you look at the hype cycles that we go through, they contribute a lot to these dramatic swings that we see actually in the industries themselves, right?
Yeah.
So
you're based in San Diego, so the sun is almost always shining, although not recently, I understand. Do you still love the city as much as visitors like I do?
I guess yeah, you know what? For us, it's great. We get rain. We have variety. I mean, sometimes you get sick of sunny days and perfect
It's
weather
terrible.
every single day. So we like it. It's just that sometimes visitors they arrive on the wrong day or the wrong week, and they don't get that wonderful San Diego experience. So yeah.
Yeah, as a native Californian, are you concerned with what's happening in Silicon Valley? Have we taken the sheen off the Silicon Valley image with the bank failure and the
Yeah.
downsizing and big tech reentrenchment, or is this just is this a leveling off till the next trillion or
Yeah,
more?
you know what? I think it's healthy.
Yeah.
I think it's a really healthy thing. It's painful for the people who are going through what the Valley is experiencing. I've worked in the Valley during the dot-com era, and I'm there quite frequently because a lot of the tech companies are up there. But it's just sometimes just risk piles up.
Yeah.
And we've seen this before, and it'll probably happen again. Hopefully not. Maybe we learned something, but I don't get my hopes up too high.
Yeah, our ability to learn from
My
the past is,
yeah, my expectation is that we will forget
yeah, yes,
and
We'll,
repeat
we'll,
the
we'll,
same
people
things.
like you and I will keep the memory alive.
That's what.
It's the season for business events. I'm at Enterprise Connect
Yeah.
next week in Orlando, another sunny destination, which would be pretty fun. What are you looking forward to? Any travel or events or
Yeah.
personal trips you might have on the radar?
Well, nothing personal yet, but I do have the NAM show, which is the largest music merchants. I'm a musician, so I go there,
Oh
but
wow,
also a lot of tech there. I think it's like one of the most underappreciated. The music industry is one of the most underappreciated industries in tech. We never talk about it.
mm.
We talk about automotive and all this stuff, and it's like, well, what about media and entertainment? And
Yeah, and America's kind of a music superpower globally, so it's one of
yeah,
those industries we
yeah,
take for granted. Another industry we are actively involved with is social media. So
yeah,
I'm always looking at your account for cool content. You've got 185,000 followers, which is
yeah.
extraordinary for LinkedIn. Any tips or tricks for us mere mortals with like 50,000 followers on LinkedIn? What's been your secret to social media success there?
Oh, geez. I would say if you are a introvert like me, be a big mouth. See if you
Right.
can muster the courage to say something. I mean, that's literally been my formula.
Right.
Honestly, I have no idea how I got there. Uh, Obviously, I've said something, or I say things that resonate, or are either entertaining or what have you, informative to a broad audience, and it's just something that I've committed to and I've been doing this for probably like 7 years on LinkedIn. So it's not something that happened overnight. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. Well, also you do take a point of view. A lot of people don't have a point of view, and
Um,
that's important. People, either way, positive or negative, like to
yeah.
respond to a point of view or perspective.
Right. Yeah.
And just the last quote here: "Have a plan, but plan on that not going according to plan." So these quotes really, I'm sure, do well on LinkedIn. But yeah, that was a good one. Well,
Oh,
one thing that did go according to plan was this live stream. No glitches, no audio problems. So really good catching up with you.
yeah.
And continue to chat on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Absolutely. And thanks for having me on, Evan. And I really appreciate the opportunity to meet with you and have this fun conversation.
Yeah, yeah. Good to
Great.
finally put a name to the face, to the video,
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
social media handle. And thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend. Happy Friday. Stay